right, welcome to Thursday. Yes, Thursday again, because I missed Monday and Tuesday due to illness. Again, the Patreons get all the sordid details about this today. So if you want to become a patron, if you want to sign up and do all this stuff, it's the beginning of the month. It's a good time to do it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Today I'm going to talk about something that follows from yesterday's video. I'm recording it right afterwards. Same clothes, everything like that. I told you I'm pre-recording so I can rest on Wednesday. I want to talk about this idea of alternatives to call-out culture. Dealing with some of these issues that we all care about very much in video games. Unfortunately, because the Gamergate controversy was badly handled in 2014, 2015, everybody sort of stiffens a bit when anything about consumer rights in the gaming sector or anything to do with women or people of color comes up. We all just, oh God, please not that again. And it makes it very hard to discuss these sorts of things in a productive way. The problem is we have a new console cycle coming up very, very soon. We need to discuss consumer rights and consumer protections because this new hardware is likely going to be more expensive than ever before. Granted, adjusted for inflation, no guarantees there. Games are still cheaper adjusted for inflation than they were in the 80s when games were $50, but that $50 went a lot farther. Gas was, oh God, at the same time. Well, gas is down now. The last time I saw gas prices this low was when games cost $50. Okay. So that gives you a sense. It was like half of what gas usually costs. So if the same inflation happened, games would be like $100 now. And with seasons passes and all that stuff, they are for a lot of people, or with DLC, but your base is $80 here in Canada. I believe it's still like $70 in the US, or if it's a Nintendo game, it's lower than that. But I'm already getting the discussions with people of they think they can only afford one console because they're both going to probably be around $600. And then when you factor in additional controllers and all those peripherals and all that stuff, you're talking $700 or $800. That's a big investment. People are not going to go out and buy more than one console, maybe every year, every 2 years. Now, the Switch is going to have long legs. But we're talking like people are choosing between PS5 and Xbox, whatever the fuck they're going to call it. I think they're just calling it Xbox again. People are going to have to choose. And so good consumer practices are extremely important because that's a fair amount of money for people to drop, especially since people are, going to be now making this decision after having been laid off for hopefully only 2 months. Possibly, if things really hit the fan in the US with this COVID-19 stuff, more like 3. And so it's very important to talk about consumer practices. And I mean, one of the big sore points right now is Sony's very obvious censorship of Japanese games in North America. I have a much more nuanced perspective than the people who are just, nope, no censorship, period. As somebody who has been forced numerous times to censor my content, not because I thought it was right, but because it was like, I want to keep working. I have sympathy for Sony. I appreciate that they're doing it kind of in the open. Everybody sort of knows about it. Whereas, Xbox doesn't have this problem because Xbox does not have that player base that plays Japanese games on Xbox, right? Nintendo is allowing them through their online store. I think, though, that is because on Switch, there's much tighter parental controls through their shop. I suspect that's what it is. But if, I think it is definitely... Oh, hi, Zelda. it's definitely important to, I said Nintendo, Zelda showed up. I think it's definitely important to support Nintendo in its anti-censorship practices. On the same time, I do not personally punish Sony too much because they are only censoring the North American version of the games. I see it as basically North American consumers being punished collectively for being a bunch of dumbasses on this subject collectively. I personally think the best way to deal with this stuff is to talk about it openly and freely. Give game developers the freedom to let them make the games they want to make, including not forcing them to not have a female character, forcing them to have a male playable character because marketing departments still think that's easier to market and sell. Yes, this is still going on today. There's a reason that you see a lot of games where you can choose male or female. Not many games where it's like a hardwired character one way or the other. It's because of those internal fights. Now, there are a lot of nuances with that. I might get into those at a later date. But now it's important to recognize that there are a lot of competing pressures on this score. Now, if in conscience you cannot support Sony because of its censorship of Japanese games in North America, that is your choice, and I will defend your choice as a principled stand, even though I don't share it, because I see the logic there, right? And Sony is going to have to decide whether it's worth losing those consumers. My personal thought is the minute this eases, the minute North America stops being utterly histrionic, bad choice of words there because of the origin, but hysterical, bad choice of words again. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, there we go. About this issue, I think you will see Sony relaxing those standards. It's just a cultural thing of they don't understand what's going on. They don't want to offend anyone first and foremost. And so like, okay, we're going to let the Japanese do things Japanese style because we don't have a problem with this. We're going to let North America chill out for a bit. And I understand as a content creator, as somebody who has to make those calls, as somebody who very rarely doesn't touch topics because I personally am afraid to confront them. But I know on the podcast side, there were some topics I wanted to do. I couldn't find anybody else who was comfortable talking about it. And so I just let it go because it wasn't fair to arm twist someone when I couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't take crap for it. And, you know, this is why we need alternatives to call out culture, because that's not an artistic decision. When it's just, I don't want the noise. I don't want to take the shit. I just, no, I'm tired of it. I'm exhausted. I'm sick of social media being a garbage fire. We're just gonna chill until everybody chills. I think, quite frankly, and what I've heard from people is all that is done is made developers hold back in terms of taking creative risks with developing new types of characters and allowing new types of people to be meaningful parts of video games. You know, there wasn't a ton of freaking out when, you know, what is it, AMC that runs Dispatches from Elsewhere? The female lead on that show is trans. And they bring it up very, very subtly on the show, but the character could also very easily have not been trans and been the exact same character, and she's great in the part, and I actually think it adds an element of interest to it that otherwise wouldn't have been there. Otherwise, the character would have been pretty cliche, I got to admit. But you know, there wasn't a big freak out about it. One, because the show didn't shove it in people's faces. But also, I think because people were like, well, yeah, it's a character. That's fine. It's not replacing anything. There was nothing in that spot before. Just, yeah, she's trans. All right, makes sense in this story. And that's a step forward. With gaming, it's more this big reveal. We are doing this time. We are changing this because this is, this is in the good of all. This is the greater good. And that's when people start freaking out, because the implication is if you disagree, you're a bad person. I think that gaming needs new IP developed more often in general, and that will solve the problem. I understand that with certain existing franchises that have a large fan base behind them, that's more difficult to do. NetherRealms just can't start a new fighting game. Why? Nobody's going to buy it. Everybody wants a new Mortal Kombat game. But instead of nerfing the existing costumes, why not introduce new characters that from the beginning have a different personal aesthetic? Don't change what's already there, because then people who play games to get away from the judgments in the outside world feel judged by their games. And it's an extra betrayal because they didn't choose the way those characters were dressed in the first place. And those companies made justifications about those costumes for years. And then all of a sudden they backflipped. They flip-flopped. They're like, nope, we have to be more respectful of women now. Well, you're basically admitting that you were disrespectful to women this whole time before this. And obviously people who defended you, seeing it another way because you told them another story, are understandably pissed. That's why I dropped the Mortal Kombat franchise. I did not like the idea that up until then, NetherRealm Studios was knowingly doing things that they found exploitative to women. It's one thing to not know. It's one thing to say we see this differently now. It's one thing to say we didn't know any better. It's another thing to sit there on your high horse and act like, oh, well, we were always at war with Oceania, right? No, then I get pissed. And maybe that's why I understand people who they just hit a line that they can't follow the bullshit anymore. And let's face it, there's plenty of other things to play out there right now that give you a complete game, and half the character roster isn't stuff you have to pay extra for. And there seems to be a correlation, I won't say causation, but a correlation between people taking these big swings in sort of social justice and either problems with employee treatment or not the best consumer practices. And, the example with Mortal Kombat is, oh yeah, you have to pay a ton more money to get some of these other characters that they've already advertised. It's pay to play. You can't unlock the characters by playing the game, and the money is just you speed that up. No, the only way to get these characters is to pay for them. And a lot of fighting games do this. I think Killer Instinct started with like 4 characters and you had to buy the rest. But I'm pretty sure that game was free with those base 4 characters. I could be wrong. But that isn't what fighting games were when I came up. It was cool to know their characters you unlocked through skill. And companies can set any business practice they want, but this idea of, I am not willing to sign on to something that just means I'm going to have to pay more money and pay more money. Because I want to spend my money on other things, not keeping current in a single franchise. So the 1-2 punch of, oh, you basically shamed retroactively characters, I thought made absolute sense the way they were dressed before, and basically shamed me in the process of doing it. And you know how I respond to that. But also, it's just too expensive. It's just too expensive to keep up with this franchise now. I mean, that's different than something like Destiny that's done seasons. I understand the last one has been a hunk of garbage. But before that, it's like, okay, there's new content. It's basically an expansion pack, No problem. It's new content. It's basically more game. We're fine with paying for more game because what do we get? More game. It's not the same game with a different character. And granted, new character equals new experience in a fighting game, but still, you know what I mean, right? Like, why are they sucking so much extra money out of the consumer? There are various reasons for that. We need to talk about those various reasons. We can't talk about those various reasons if everybody freaks out on certain topics. Solid consumer practices are very important to me. Respecting dignity for everybody in gaming so everybody can have fun is also very important to me. These two things do not need to be in opposition. The fact that they are in opposition is artificial, and it's created by people that can't hold their shit down when certain topics come up. And I have more faith in professionals in gaming than that. I think, I don't consider myself, I'm tough, but, I don't think I have a natural, inherent ability to just take more shit than the average person. I think I have received proper training in certain professionalism, and my expectations are such that it isn't the end of the world when I take shit over something. Things may piss me off because I think somebody's behaving unethically, but the fear factor is not there for me. And I think that's very important. I think the only way to we need more people like me. We need more people who are not the typical white guy in a baseball cap. I don't know why people wear baseball caps inside, but I see a lot of YouTubers in baseball caps when they're on camera. But we need different voices. And even if you are a white guy and you have a totally different take on something for various reasons, say you're disabled, say, whatever your circumstances are, that's important. We need more global voices. We need more everybody. And the only way we can do that is to lower the barriers to entry. And griefing on social media is a big barrier for a lot of people because it takes time before you make money at this. A lot of the time you're doing it hopefully for fun, but you're doing it to build an audience until it's enough to, if not live on, at least be a lucrative side hustle. And you don't get to that point when the process of building that is just damn miserable. And even for the people right now who are doing really well financially, I don't think their experience should be as negative as it is. I don't think that benefits anyone. Because I don't care who you are. If people freak out on you too much, you do avoid that topic. I talk about this concept very, very infrequently, precisely because people get the wrong idea and people go, oh yeah, we don't like her. So once again, I'm not going to get invited to things. I'm going to get blacklisted. Publicists drop me off their lists. I don't get copies of anything. I don't get invites to anything. I've basically given up at this point. And this is so stupid because I have a really good track record of caring about diversity and inclusion, like really meaningfully care in it, in every project I have done. And, when you're kicking out people like me, just because I'm like, look, people who hold other opinions are not going to change my mind. I can see other points of view as a principled stance, but I still believe what I believe and I'm going to keep going. You kick out people like me, you weaken the ability to get stuff done. Because if you're losing people like me, you're certainly losing people who agree with you less. That's not how change happens. That's not how stuff gets done. That's not how paradigms change. You can't change a paradigm by making people miserable. You can only change a paradigm by persuading in a positive way that there will be net benefits to doing something different. And this is true no matter what industry, no matter what group of people, no matter what cause you are dealing with. People don't make lateral moves unless they're convinced that it will be better. Because all that means is they put all that work in and nothing changed. They're now getting grief from one group of people instead of another group of people, but they're still getting grief. So what's the damn point? Well, in gaming, it's, well, you don't get those deals. You don't get those doors opened. And that's wrong. That's really wrong. Because who's that cutting off more than anything? The very people that these people are claiming to help. People who do not already have ins, which means women, which means people of color, which means people from different financial circumstances, which means people who don't live in urban centers. Those are the ideas we need. Those are the stories that will be fresh and different and new. And we may not like them personally, but we have to be more open to other people telling their stories so that stories that we like can be told. And gamers are smart. I mean, that's not a platitude. Gamers are smart people. Why? Because we have to solve all those damn puzzles in video games, right? We have to work on all those combos and all that stuff. That's no joke. That takes ability. There are some people who will never be able to do that. And so we are uniquely fortunate in terms of, if you tell gamers something that makes sense, they will listen to you as long as they don't feel shamed in the process, because shame is also something that too many gamers have too much of. There's so much bullying. There's so much abuse in the backgrounds of people who gravitate towards solitary or anonymous activities like video games, that the minute there's a whiff of that in what they consider their safe space, they shut down. And that's very meaningful, and that's very real, and that's something that really needs to be respected. And I really think we will get much more positive outcomes that make everybody more money, but also give everybody a more positive online and end user experience, like consumer experience, player experience, whatever you want to call it. I prefer fan experience or player experience, because treating gamers like just mindless consumers, gamers as people who just spend money, I think that's the wrong attitude. That's the attitude that, oh yeah, they'll pay for extra characters because they like those characters, right? No, but they're players. You want them to play your game. You don't want people to walk away from your game because it's too expensive to play, right? So that's my thoughts on it. I do see green shoots in terms of, I hate that cliche. Forget I said that. I do see improvement in certain spaces. I see a lot more dialogue opening up. Some people are not in as protective a crouch. People are admitting to know me again. They're talking to me in public instead of just privately, because they're no longer afraid they'll get fired for talking to me. But it's still very precarious. And because I do want the best player experience possible, and because I do want game companies to make a ton of money, and because I do want everybody who is interested in gaming to feel welcome in video games, provided you're not an asshole. I believe in all that stuff. And I believe all that stuff actually has synergy. I think there are things we can do to serve all of those goals. We do not have to choose. I'm really interested in your comments on this subject. So let me know. And if you like this sort of thing, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LanaK. Thanks for watching.